Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Bost. I'm a Microsoft MVP and GitKraken ambassador. What that means is I love Azure, and more importantly, I also love GitKraken. And today I want to show you how to bring those two things together. Before we dive too deep into this, I just want to get some version information out there. I'm recording this in October of 2022. The latest release of GitKraken is 8.10.1. And let's take a look at what is there. So for those of you who may not be familiar with what single sign-on is, you've probably actually used it a lot, whether that be with some email provider, one of various Microsoft services where you've had to sign in using your Microsoft account. What this lets you do with GitKraken is if you've got an Azure Active Directory where you're already managing your users, it allows you to take your GitKraken account and link it up with a group or set of users in your Azure Active Directory so that you can manage everything in one place, hopefully where you're already managing all of your users. I'm not going to spend a ton of time diving into the single sign-on stuff. The documentation from GitKraken is excellent on all of this, so I'm going to skim through it pretty fast, but the link for everything will be down in the description if you want to dive in more later. One key thing I want to call out, at least at present, so there is only a certain number of currently supported identity providers. Effectively, these are the things that contain all of your users and groups. So I'm most interested in this Azure Active Directory one, but they also do have Okta, Google Identity Platform, and Ping Identity as well. The other thing that is very important to know about is the license requirements. To be able to actually leverage the features that I'm going to be showing off here, you do need to be on a GitKraken Teams or enterprise level plan in order to be able to have access to the single sign-on. Okay, so we're going to actually take a look at what this single sign-on ends up looking like. So first of all, let's jump over my GitKraken account. Okay, so here we are in my GitKraken account. If you aren't sure how to get there, you can navigate to account.gitkraken.com. Just want to call out the email address here. For this demo, I'm using my domain of @kaboo.dev. It is important for the single sign-on feature that all of your users have an account that is in that domain. That's how these accounts are going to end up getting linked back together. So just be aware of that if you are trying to set this up, that your users do need to be all coming from the same domain. So we're going to go ahead and click on the organization I have here for GitKraken demo, and then down onto SSO. Now, if you do not see this SSO option, the most likely explanation is that you are not signed in to an account that has either that Teams or enterprise level subscription. So do check in on that. And then we're going to check the box to enable SSO. And now it pre-populated my domain only because I've done this once already. For you, it should be blank on the initial run through. You will need to populate this with your organization's domain name. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Save Changes. Okay, perfect. We will go ahead and click into the configure SSO connection, but we're actually going to need to come back and configure this a little bit more in a minute after we've set up things on the Azure side. So let's jump over to the Azure portal. Okay, here we are in my Azure portal, and we're going to go through and create an enterprise application. This is going to end up being the link between GitKraken and your Azure Active Directory. So we'll start by clicking on Azure Active Directory, and then we're going to come down here to Enterprise Applications. And here we will come up and we are going to do a new application. And then we're just going to create our own application here. So in this case, we can give it any name that we like. I'll call it GitKraken Demo. That seems reasonable. And then in this case, we're going to integrate with any other application you don't find in the gallery. We will go ahead and click Create. And this is going to take just a couple minutes to get all stood up inside of Azure. I'll see you back in just a moment. Okay, here we have our enterprise application created, and now there's several things that we need to go through and do here. First of all, we need to give some users and groups access to this enterprise application that we've created. Now, because this is Azure AD, there's a lot of ways we can go about doing this. We've got access to do automatic provisioning if you wanted, conditional access, all of that. I'm not going to dive into all of the complexities that are there. We're just going to assign some users directly to this enterprise application to be able to use it. So we will go into users and groups. I'm going to add one. Now, my Azure Active Directory tier is very low. I will link to the pricing tiers for Azure AD down in the description. But as long as you are on a P1 or P2 tier, you should be able to assign groups if you would like. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab my GitKraken demo user that we saw from before. And again, you'll note it is at kaboo.dev email address that's on there. We'll go ahead and assign access to that. Then we're going to drop down here to the single sign-on page to actually go through and get this set up. We will go ahead and use SAML. And then we need to set up this configuration here. Now, from the docs, when you get down to step 10 underneath the Azure Active Directory, this is the appropriate value for the entity ID and reply URL. So we're just going to copy that and come over here. And so for the entity ID, we'll plug that in first. And then the reply URL, we'll plug that in and go ahead and hit save. That'll take just a moment to get saved here. Perfect. Now, once we've gotten this far, as Azure is so helpfully hinting to us, we should probably go through and test our configuration to make sure that it actually works. We've assigned a user, we've set up the configuration, so let's actually make sure that that user is able to authenticate. We'll go ahead and hit yes, and I'm going to hit sign in as someone else since I want to use my GitKraken demo user. Let's go ahead and test sign in. We will go ahead and do GitKraken demo kaboo.dev. Go ahead and just paste in that password and stay signed in. Beautiful. And we get a little green check mark that says, yes, you were able to successfully sign in. Excellent. Unsaved changes. I don't know what you're talking about. We were just testing. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually give GitKraken the information to be able to use this enterprise application. So if you scroll down on the single sign-on page, you will find this App Federation metadata URL right here. This guy here, we need to end up copying, and we are going to grab that and go head on back to our single sign-in org that we have here. So right where we left off, we'll go ahead and hit configure SSO connection. And then we will hit add using metadata. We need to give this connection a name, call it Azure SSO. Select the appropriate identity provider. In this case, we are using Azure. And then that metadata URL that we had, I'm just going to go ahead and paste it right there and then create the connection. Okay, perfect. We've got everything set up. Jump over to GitKraken, see what that experience looks like. Okay, here we are on a clean machine with a fresh install of GitKraken. We'll go ahead and click the sign up with SSO and enter the email address that we used before. GitKraken demo at kaboo.dev. Click the sign in button. This is going to pop up our browser and walk us through the standard sign in process for Microsoft accounts. I will say your experience here may vary depending on how your browser set up, different profiles. If this is already the single sign-on user that maybe you have configured with Windows or similar, this may or may not jump you through different prompts. If you have two-factor auth or similar that is set up, all of those things will end up coming into play. Okay. Demo at dev. Go ahead and put the password in there. Sign in, yes please. Successfully signed in. We'll go ahead and let the browser kick back to GitKraken. And GitKraken has pulled down my profile information. We're signed in and it's walking me through getting an initial profile set up. So obviously the most important thing is to pick an awesome icon for your profile. I love the little Git Mage, so we're going to call this a Mage profile. It's already got my author name and email set up for me, which is perfect. I'll go ahead and hit create profile. And there we have it. GitKraken signed in with SSO and Azure Active Directory. So hopefully you found that rather interesting. If you run into any problems, you can always find the Getting Started guide, frequently asked questions, and information at help.gitkraken.com. GitKraken also has a great Slack channel at slack.gitkraken.com. Again, all the links in the description. That, I'll say thank you, everyone. Happy coding. Talk to everyone next time.